Let me switch off all this nonsense and then we can start. Actually, let me just reset all. Perfect. Hello everyone, how are you guys doing today? I have a video planned for you guys, but in order for us to get into that video, I need to first teach you a few things about practice mode. So that's what we're going to do today. And if the video skips on YouTube, sometimes exporting something from Twitch to YouTube makes the skips come up. I'm going to put annotations in case there's any audio that's skipped over, so make sure you turn on your annotations so you don't miss anything. But besides that, let's get started on the 5 most important things I need everyone to know about practice mode. And number 1 is going to be the latest features that were added into practice mode. We're going to start with simple select. Now many people look at simple select and think, it's simple. Just pick who you want and go, which is fine. There's a bit more to it though. For example, I've picked Panda and Kazumi. I've labbed something from Kazumi and I want to check, hey, can my other character step this string? Can my other character punish this? Whatever. So I come to simple select. I can decide to switch on this side if I want. It's in alphabetical order. Or I can decide to switch to Kazumi. So I come to confirm player 1 and I switch to player 2 character. Easy as that. If you don't want to scroll through manually, you can press X and pick this way with the pictures as well. Makes it easier. And something to always keep note of, DLC characters, including Akuma, who's not DLC, but he's counted as part of them. They're at the bottom of the list always, and they're not in alphabetical order. They're listed in the order of release. So keep that in mind. Helps make labbing. It makes like mass labbing much easier if you're labbing like extensively your character. Okay, that's the basics. We all knew that. Second one is the customized slots. You know them from character select where your outfits are. It might not be easy to memorize, but it's always good to know. I like keeping my favorite customs on the last one. So I know custom 8 is going to be a sick custom. Custom 10 is going to be an amazing custom because they're the easiest to reach both in practice mode and when you're fighting in ranked. Okay? Now there's this option that I don't think many people know of. If I want to switch from player 1 to player 2, instead of going back to main menu and picking side again, or instead of coming here to switch positions, I can just come to simple select and change my position from left to right. Then once I confirm everything, it's going to be in player 2, but I'll show you that all at once, so it's one loading screen. And then controller setup. If you've noticed here, there's only controller setup for player 1. There's no controller setup for the CPU, of course, because they don't need controls. They use macros or whatever. Also easier to come setup from here. Same thing in versus battle. Simple select, instead of going back to character select, set up your controls, confirm and exit. It saves, and we're good to go. So I'm going to pick a custom, and I'm going to change to right. I'll confirm this side. I'm going to change the character to anyone random. I'm going to pick a custom for them. They are left, and we confirm. So it's going to load again, and it'll bring you back here. That's it about simple select. Pretty straightforward. The next thing I want to talk about is the other addition that came with simple select, which is punishment training. Many people have not touched punishment training at all. And it's kind of sad because it's a really good mode. Punishment training is it's in the first tab only. So you come here and then you see all this and you're like, what's this? Select begin training, blah blah blah. So there's normal and there's hard. Now normal is quite easy. It just tells you where to block. Mid is gonna be there, and then low will go down to my feet. But that's not important right now. I just want you guys to know that it's there. For normal, the punish won't change until I actually execute any punish. It doesn't have to be the punish that it's listing, but any punish I do, as long as it's a punish, the game will be like, great, you did that. And then we'll move on to the next one. So in normal, that doesn't switch. But in hard, the punish will switch often. The move they do switches. It'll always tell you where to block, so now I know I'm always going to be blocked, and then when it goes down, I know it's a low. That's how you can tell. And you have the option of turning this off as well if you really want to just use your reactions. Okay, but the move keeps on changing. It's a very, very good mode to have. And you can come here and choose the moves you want the CPU to do. You can't add your own, but you can remove some of the ones that you don't need to lab against. There's some that are quite repetitive, some that make no sense being together, to lab these two when they're together, for example. So I can remove as many as I want and have only one, or I can have all of them play. Okay, again, basic stuff. I'm pretty sure most of us know this already. There's the option of unmarking all of them with R2, so that you just start the ones you want. And there's an option of marking them all again with L2. And then you exit when you're done, finish practicing, and we're back to normal main menu. Easy as pie. Now the last thing that I want us to talk about, that is gonna be the main focus of my future video, is the frame data overlay. Now of course this is something you have to pay for, which is weird, but let's not judge. The frame data overlay, player frame info, is in the third tab, display settings. You come here and there's two things. There's a simple display and a detailed display. Now simple display is not really that useful. It's the old hit analysis that we used to have before frame data, but then they did a few adjustments where there's a light red, there's like light color, and then there's like dark colors. So the lighter it is, the less frame disadvantage. The darker it is, the higher the advantage or disadvantage. Pretty simple, that's all there is to it. It's not really that useful, to be honest, except if you're doing like specific combos. But when we come to detailed display, excuse me, coming here to detailed display, now here's where I need to explain everything, because Namco did not tell us a thing what any of this means. They just gave us and they just told us to use it. So the first thing to know, startup frame, the most important thing, how fast is the move? The fastest move in the game is a jab. Typically, there are some exceptions, but typically the fastest move in the game is a jab, which is 10 frames. Immediately I see here that Kuma's jab is 11 frames, which is a problem on his part. That's not my problem. Of course he has a 10 frame version with forward 1, but then we see that 10 frames. Now the number outside the brackets shows the frame in which the move connected, and the numbers in the brackets show the active frames of the move. So now that it says that the move is 10 to 10, it means it has one active frame, and it's only active on the 10th frame. Anything before, anything after, that's either startup or recovery. So it connects on the 10th frame and on the 10th frame alone. But other slower moves, for example forward 2, you can see that it connected on the 19th frame, which is the earliest frame, and its latest frame is 21 frames. Now it may be hard to set this up on a standing opponent, but like usually in Oki situations and such, that's when you'll start hitting moves in the later frames. Other fighting games call them meaty. But yes, the frame outside the brackets is the frame in which the move connects. The frames in the brackets are the active frames of the move, from beginning to end. That's it, that's all there is to it. When we come to frame advantage now, there's a lot of questions, because there's a lot of weird things that happen, a lot of numbers that pop up. So here's what they mean. The number outside the brackets is the actual frame advantage itself. Now when we're standing the way we are now, we're in neutral. No one has any advantage, we're both at 0. But as soon as an interaction happens, on hits, this one jab is +6. Panda recovers 6 frames faster than Lee. So the next thing I do will come out 6 frames earlier than the next thing Lee will do, if we do something at the same time. I think that makes sense, and should make sense. But then when it comes to the frames in the brackets, now the brackets frames, those ones are usually reserved for knockdowns. And what they mean is those are the frames before the opponent can tech roll. So Panda's standing 3 is 21 frames, but then in brackets it says +11, which means Lee is in the air for 11 frames before he has access to tech rolling. So I am 21 plus 21. I can run up for 21 frames and have that advantage. But Lee has 11 frames from the moment of impact to the moment where he can access tech rolling. And this is very important for later, because there are some launchers that cannot be tech rolled. For example, this. You see what happens there? They are knocked down, but there's nothing in brackets because they cannot tech roll. They do not get access to tech rolling. So how to know a move can or can't be teched is if there's nothing in the brackets. For example, even moves that don't knock down, there's no access to tech rolling, so nothing will appear in the brackets. So that's what the brackets are for. Okay, that's it for frame advantage. I hope the stream is still running because it's kind of frozen on my laptop. I hope we're together. Okay, next thing, status. I really hope we're together. Status. Right now we're both standing. Pretty self-explanatory. There's multiple statuses in this game. There is standing, there is airborne, and then on Lee's side there is... Okay, let me get him to not stand up. So there is standing, there is airborne, and there is downed. There's also another state. There's a fourth state, but we'll get into that. The invincible state. But for now, let's work with those three. Standing, pretty self-explanatory. I'm upright. There's crouching, of course. I forgot to mention that one. That means... Now, crouching state, what crouching state does is that it turns off the hitboxes of high moves. Turns them off. You will never get hit by a high if you're in a crouching state. Now, some moves have high evasion. This move has some high evasion because he puts the head down. But since it's not a crouching state, it means some highs like electric. But this move for 3+4 is a crouching state move, which means highs are completely turned off. Electrics will never hit Panda out of this move because she is considered crouching. Okay? And then it doubles on a down state. On a down state, highs are still turned off as well. Some mids work, like very low hitbox mids work on downed opponents. But again, highs are turned off completely for crouching and down states. Okay? We'll talk about invincibles in a bit, but for now, if you can notice, there's the airborne where Lee is juggled airborne and it's in white, but Panda, when she jumps, it's airborne but it's in blue. What that means simply, when it's blue, it means we've turned off low hitboxes, the low hitbox move. We've turned off all of Lee's low hitbox moves. So when it's airborne blue, no low in the game will work. If there's an exception, please let me know, but no low will connect as soon as it says it's blue airborne. It's not blue immediately. There's no way I can slow this down. Jumping should be immediate though. Let's say a hop kick, for example. Hop kicks usually crash at the 6th frame. So she gets airborne, yes. Some lows will still connect for 6 frames, and then after that, it's blue airborne, invincible to lows. And then she lands again. And if you can really tell, I don't know if it's possible to tell, but it goes white first, and then it goes to standing. It's very hard to tell. But yes, the crashing is for a very specific time. So that's how you know a move is invincible to lows. Some airborne moves aren't invincible to lows. And of course, when you're being juggled, they're airborne. But since there's no blue, it means highs, mids, lows, no hitboxes are turned off. All the moves will work. I hope that makes sense. If I've lost anyone, please let me know. And then the last status is tech rolling, invincibility. Now tech rolls are invincible. You can see there, when Lee is tech rolling, he's invincible while he's tech rolling. So that forward 4-2, even if it did track to that side, like assuming it did, it would never hit him because he has no hurtbox during tech rolling. No hurtbox whatsoever. Okay? Pretty self-explanatory. There's other characters that have invincible statuses in their moves. For example, Akuma's DP, we all know it. He also gets invincible. But this is the universal invincible state. Okie dokie. Okie dokie. So those are the four or five statuses, I forget. And the last thing is the distance from the opponent. Pretty self-explanatory. Though something people need to keep in mind. How will I show this? How will I show this? You see when the narrator says round 1, fight. During the point where he says fight, you see how Lee's distance is constantly changing? When he says fight, it's always a specific distance. And depending on the kind of character you use, you might want to keep that distance in mind. Because some characters sway back and then they sway forward, like Miguel, for example. I highlighted this in a previous video. He leans back, and then by the time the narrator says fight, he has leaned his most forward, meaning he's brought his heartbox closer to you, and none of you have been allowed to move yet. So I do recommend, if your character is one of those Bobby Weavy characters, keep that in mind to test. It's very important, because if you're an aggressive character and you want to throw out a jab, you want to know if you'll have leaned back and then you're reaching forward, or if he's leaned forward and then you're jabbing forward. It's actually really important. It's actually really important. Okay, we are done with part 1 of practice modes. Where's the distance measure from, by the way? The tip of the toe or the closest point? It's usually the closest point. It's usually the closest point. Because you see how this resets and then it's 1.9? Usually the game starts at 2. Let's use the most stationary characters. Usually it starts at 2 meters. But I'm not too sure actually if it's the closest point or if it's the tip of the nose. I doubt it's the tip of it might be the legs. It might be the legs. Let's see. I know who I'll check. I'll check with Master Raven because she sticks her leg forward. But for Leroy, it should be 2. Let's see. Oh no, it's loading screen the stream once more. Yeah, see, it's like 2 flat. Okay, it's basically 2. And for characters who, let's see, let's use Raven, and then we'll use Falcomram, someone really big. No, Marduk. Raven mirror and then Falcomram mirror. Just to really test that, because I do think this is something really important to know for these characters. For certain characters, of course. Like Alice is another one. Her neutral stance involves a lot of like odd movements, even law to some extent. Okay, so it's 2, but it's increasing, which makes, you see how the toes are so close together, so it can't be 2 there. So it must be 2 from the, I don't know. I honestly don't. But from the biggest, from like the closest, when they're the closest, it goes to 2. So I think the game measures from that, and then it like manually separates them to reach 2 meters. I don't know how it calculates that, but it does. And because of how Raven is, if I jab, the jab will whiff, because again, her stance. Important. If let's say it was Miguel on this side and he leaned forward and it said start, if I jabbed it would connect. But since Raven is not leaning forward, if I jab it won't connect. I hope that makes sense. It should make sense. If there are any more questions, do let me know. Okay, now we talk about how to move around the practice dummy. Arguably the most important part of practice modes is how to practice with a dummy. I need to switch position though, I don't like being player 2. Okay, so there's many ways to manipulate the opponent, the practice dummy, and they're all important. None of them are not important. You'll click X, you'll see all this, you'll be like, I don't need all this. What is all this? Who? What? There's those 4 tabs. Now the most basic thing that everyone should know is that you want this to be stand and you want this to be guard all. It's always set to not set by default, which so that I can keep hitting her as much as I want and the moves connect in case I drop a combo or whatever. But you want this to be guard all most of the time, so that, you know, like, you can take advantage of, you know, frame advantage stuff. You can see what's natural and what's not. Basic things. You want ground technique to be side quick roll left. Alright, but mostly left. Most people tech roll to the left. Most people tech roll with square. And most people play player 1. So if you're player 1 and you're tech rolling with square, they're gonna be tech rolling to the left. So you want that to be left. But in case you're labbing a specific setup, you can switch this way. And then lastly, you want this to be wake up backward. Because waking up backward is the best way to get up in this game. It never used to be. It used to be the worst. But now it stands to be the best. At least the least dangerous. There's like more effective ways, but it's the least dangerous way of waking up. So you want to leave that way. However, when you want to go more in depth and you want to make the most out of your lab session, that's when now you come into these other settings. For example, I've set a standing guard because I want to do a slow move and I want to see the frames on it. The frames are mirrored, so keep in mind my frames are on the right, hers on the left. You set that to standing guard, and then it'll still be guard all in the second one. Stand and approach is the most useful one by far. In case you want to reposition yourself, you set stand and approach and the practice dummy will just follow you. There's this other one that's crouch and approach. There's pretty much very little use for it, but it's in case you want if you want to start with a move that works only on crouches, for example Raven's down forward 4, it only launches crouches. So if you want to reposition and then you want to start with that move, that's what that is for. It's a very niche need, but know it's there. And you might think that because they're holding down and forward to come closer to you that they're low parrying. If you catch them while coming to you, they're not low parrying. The only way to set up low parry in practice mode is to manually record it. They can't low parry using this method. And then we have crouching guard, which is pretty self-explanatory. They're blocking, but that's a mid. Guard all, self-explanatory. Now random guard, what this is important for is for hit confirms. Does Raven have any? For example, if I have this launcher, down forward 2, 3, and then if I see she's blocked, I can finish the string. But if I see she hasn't blocked, I continue the combo. That I delayed way too. No, I should do down forward 2, 4 is the hit confirmable one. So if I see they block, I do the 4 because I want to stay safe. But if I see it hits, I continue with my combo. So what this does is it helps you set up it helps you practice your awareness. Like you're looking in a match, you won't get a chance to, like, you know, set up things, perfect conditions. It'll be completely random whether the opponent blocks or not, especially if you're just fishing for a launch. So you just fish, you see if they've blocked or not. The CPU will do it super randomly. So it's perfect for labbing hit confirms. Like Mishima 112. If you want to practice that, set it to random guard. Okay? Very important for hit confirm characters. Jump is pretty self-explanatory, of course. However, if you want to lab an airborne thing, you have to realize that the height in which they are matters significantly. Because if you catch her at the top of her jump, you'll get access to more combos than when she's just about to land. Like let's look at the frames, for example. That was 35 frames advantage, but if I time for it to be closer to the ground, it's gone down to 28. I have less frames to work with. So when you're using jump to lab something, make sure you're trying to time it at the highest point. Jump is super important for people to lab when they're fishing for a launcher and then somehow you've hit them out of something. You want to know if your launcher can still convert. You really want to test this. If I cut, like, see, when stuff like that happens, I need to know what I can do to, like, salvage combos. So it's very important to at least take all your characters, at least your main characters, and lab your launchers if you can get conversions if they hit airborne opponents. Because it's gonna save your life, or rather you're gonna save a lot of damage you could have lost by not converting. It's happened to me multiple times. Neutral guard Neutral guard is not really that important to lab, but it's good when it's there. There are moves that are called guard breaks, and what they literally are is neutral guard breaks. So if an opponent is just standing there, they're blocking automatically. In versus battle, neutral guard is the default state, but in practice mode, stand is the default state. So now it's like we're in versus battle. It's like we've both set up our controls, and then someone has gone AFK. Now there will be a neutral guard. Now there are these moves called guard breaks, like while running 3s are universally guard breaks, which means after that they can't neutral guard. I guess hers is not. No, it's only +9. It's not +10. Does she have any other guard breaks? I'll look for a proper character to explain this. But yes, it breaks the guard. This should be a guard break though. Oh wait, no, I set it to guard all. My bad. I've set it to guard all. That's why that's happening. Let's go to the wall. Why are they embarrassing me like this? Oh, it's back to neutral guard. Okay. You know what? Take my word for it. Just believe me. I'm not sure about Ravens while running 3. It should be a guard break, but anyway, we're not dwelling on that today. We're almost done. I love saying that, then taking 3 more hours. 2P controller. Something that's really important to know as well. If you want to play 2 people, it's going to be a slight blue screen. If you want to play 2 people, let me turn on my controller. So you come here to 2P, then the game will ask you to press which controller you want to be 2P. I want this one. Now it's 2-player. But then, my player 1 has mapped controls. My shoulder buttons are mapped. However, my player 2 doesn't have mapped controls. And if I want them to have controls, I come to controller setup, and then I go to confirm and exit. Because when I first put these controls, there was no 2P controller connected. But now that there is a 2P controller connected, if I confirm these controls once more, now they will be mapped. So the game, before when I was setting up, there was no 2P controller, so the game didn't give it any controls. So if you want the other person to have controls, you do it like that. You just confirm the controls once more. Okay? CPU is very useless in this game really, but I guess it's nice to have if you just want to get familiar with a character and see what they do, blah blah blah. But it doesn't really, it's not that helpful, but it's a good way to waste time sometimes. Really familiarize yourself with a character before going online. And lastly, and most importantly, we have repeat action, which is the meat of today. Repeat action. Go back to player 1, please. What repeat action is for you to actually do some proper defensive training. So the game gives you 5 slots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which means you can map 5 things. I can choose to either record what I want the CPU to do. You see now I'm controlling the other guy. You can't see my controls down there. But down there it shows touchpad plus circle to start recording. And that's the timer. A recording can only take 30 seconds max. Which means I can record 30 seconds of shenanigans to my heart's content, and the CPU will remember and play them back to me when I want them to. Another good importance of this function is that now that I'm controlling 2-player, let's say for example I have 2 different characters and I want to like, hey, let me just check the frames on this thing. Instead of opening up frame data, whatever, or looking down the move list, I can just come to record, do the move I want to check the frames on. Oh, that starts up at 12 frames. Okay, I just wanted to check that, and then go back. It's really useful for such stuff. Better if you know the other character's move list, of course. Okay, so we record. Let's say I want to record Ravens 4-1. And then just press start. Don't try and like cancel the recording. Just pause. It'll cancel the recording for you, and you'll see that 100. I think this stands for 100%. I am not sure. It doesn't make sense as 100%, but it makes sense to me as 100%. So I've recorded my thing, it's set to 100. I just press play with touchpad and circle, and the CPU will do it for me. Fantastic. Easy as pie. The interval between the action is also quite important, depending on what you're labbing. If you're labbing multiple things, for example throws, you'd want a shorter interval. But it's up to you. There's short, normal, long, and random. Random is the best, honestly. But you work your way towards that. You don't start at random. You work your way towards that. So let's say I've labbed Ravens 4-1. I've seen that I can duck the second hit and launch it. Brilliant. I'm done with that. I say I want to lab something else. Let's say I want to lab Ravens down back 2-1. Press start to exit. Now we have two things, and they're both at 100%. This just shows the frequency of the move, like the priority of the move. If I want the CPU to do one move more than the other, I will lower the move's priority. So let's say out of the CPU will do the second move 90 times and the first move 100 times. That's not percentage, but it makes it easier for me thinking as percentage. So all this does is it lowers the priority of the moves. Let's say I want to add a third move. Down forward 2-3. Priority again. If I want him to do it less, I lower it as much as I want. So now out of 300 times, CPU will do this move. Not 300 times. Whatever the addition of that is. But that makes sense. Now to make labbing easier for you, switching between moves, you want to lower the priority of all of them to 0. Then you just put it up to 10. It'll still, since it's the only move with priority, it'll be the only move that comes out. If they're all 10, they'll still all come out to the same priority, just as random. So it doesn't need to be 100. I don't know why it defaults to 100 really, because it's much easier to navigate with 10. Because once I'm done with a set of moves, I just come 0, and then I turn on the move I want. It's much easier that way. So always set them back to 10 when you're labbing. It just makes things much smoother for you. So Ravens 4-1, I can launch that. She's back turned. Good to know. Down back 2-1. I can launch that. Good to know. She's not back turned. I can launch that. You see how quickly I'm cycling through the moves instead of having to go all the way from 100 back down to whatever and then turning this one to 100. I see many people do that sometimes, which is why I thought of mentioning it. So yes, that is record function. And last on my list is the overlays, and then we're done with practice mode, and then we can get to the meat of today. It's been 40 minutes. Okay, that's good. I thought I would take an hour. The last thing I want you guys to know about practice mode. Oh wait, I haven't talked about choosing from a move list. From a move list, it's the same thing, but then it's much easier for you. In case it's a move that has high execution, like for example a wild running 3. If you want an instant wild running 3, where are you? Where are you? Why do people play such odd characters? It's not in her move list? It must be. Okay, let me just give you... No, okay. You see, this one has like preconditions to it, like I need to go back turn and then I need to do the move, blah blah blah. If I don't want to bother recording all that, I just set it to move list, give it its priority, and then just press play. The CPU will do that all for me. I don't need to manually do it. The good thing with using move list and not recording is that the CPU remembers where you are in the move list. So if you're going through a character's moves, instead of recording all of them one by one, just lab that first one. That's minus 14, back turn, come back to move list and keep going. Then if I come here in the middle, and then I'm done with that, I keep going down, it'll still remember my position. Whichever slot I use, it'll still remember my position. So that's the nice efficiency that comes with move list. Okay? Now final thing, there were 5 things I've talked about. 4 things I've talked about. The final thing is the overlays. We've talked about the most important one, which is frame data. Very, very important. The other overlays I need you guys to know about is command history, first of all. There's no harm in having this on. It checks your inputs very nicely. so that you can see where you're messing up in maybe in a combo, in execution. You can see just how, if you're doing it properly. Now, in order to debunk this, let me just put some inputs on screen so that I can explain this better. You can see I'm doing forward, forward 3, which according to frame data is a 15 frame move, 15 to 18 frame. The last one I did was a perfect one, because if you look at the bottom right input, I hope it's clear on stream. At the bottom right input, I did a forward. No, wait. Okay, sorry. At the bottom right input, I'm doing a forward, but I'm getting another forward before I get to the forward 3. So there's one extra frame that is messing up my perfect execution. So if I want this to come out at 15 frames, the move itself is 15 frames, not counting the input. So if I add that forward, that's 16 frames. I add that neutral, that's another 16 frames. Another frame, 17 frame. If I add that one, 18 frames. So my move is coming out at 18 frames. It's saying it's hitting at the 15th frame because the move is activating when I press X. But if I want the whole sequence to take a total of 15 frames, or 16, I need to do it very fast. I messed it up there. But you see how I did forward into forward 3, and the forward and 3 came at the same frame? That's how I know I'm doing it at the fastest input, because I'm not getting any other extra forwards. It's really not that easy. This is especially important for Mishima players. It's not that easy to get these things frame perfect, and that's because of the nature of the DualShock. It's not because of your execution. You're doing fantastic. You're doing your best. We love you for that. But because of how the DualShock is structured, the D-pad, if you can look at your controller like this, you can tell your D-pad is raised a bit higher than the action buttons. That's one reason. The other reason is that your left hand and your right hand, one is stronger than the other. One is more responsive than the other. So if I want to press forward and 3 at the same time, I'm pressing forward down before I press 3. Because typically in Tekken, we use the D-pad more. So this muscle has really been working out. So this is your most powerful muscle when it comes to Tekken. So you'll always be pressing directions first before this one. You rarely press this, at least not as much as the other one. So if you're mapping something, I want to do a perfect forward 3, but I'm still getting forward, forward 3. If I want to tighten my execution, I want to make sure those are getting on the same frame. So what I do is that I press X first, and then forward, and you see I'm getting them on the same frame. You see that? I mentally tell myself my right hand is slower, press X first, and then now they'll come on the same frame. Okay? Very useful. Command history is very useful for showing you such stuff. If your character has a lot of forwards and you want perfect execution, use command history. Health gauge, not that important. Player attack info. For some reason, most people, I don't know why this comes default as hidden, but this should always be on display. Your combo meter, your CPU's combo meter. When you're labbing, you wanna know the damage that they're doing, because with this off, and then I set them to do something and they hit me. Oh my gosh, these characters. I don't know how much damage that's done. I'm just labbing it, but I don't know how much damage that's done. So I'm not getting the full extent of the threat of the move I'm labbing. But I just come turn this on, CPU, opponent attack info. Just keep it on. There's no need for it to be off. It's not taking that much space. It does look a bit cluttered, but I always love having it on. Always. You can remove one of the frame datas. You don't need both, because it's the same thing mirrored. So as long as you understand one side, you'll know what the other side is saying. 99% of the time. There's very few instances where it'll be different, especially like when you're knocked down. But yes, you can just keep one if you want. You can also turn off command history if you want. But for me, having my overlay look this cluttered, I normally don't have health gauge on though. I don't need that. I like this look. It might be a bit much for you guys, but all the important information is where you need it to be. It feels like you're actually in a lab, and I find it less boring this way. Okay. recovery animation is sort of similar to the hit analysis thing we talked about in the frame data. The frames end. When they stop being blue, they finish recovering. Same for the other person. It doesn't show you the extent of the frame advantage or disadvantage, but it's best, for example, for really tight combos, like if you want to link two forward 3s. I need to know when to start pressing the next forward, because if I just do forward 3 so quick like that, too early. So what this will help me with is I'll wait to see when does Reverend become blue. Oh, she becomes blue when her left foot touches the ground. So when will I do the next forward 3? After her left foot touches the ground, for example. So that's the importance of that, but I don't find much use of it. Most people do. Good for them. And that's it. That is the important stuff I wanted to talk about today. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna restart the stream. Unless anyone has any other questions, I'm gonna restart the stream so that I can start the actual video I wanted to talk about. But if there are no questions, we shall move forward swiftly. Okay, no questions. Fantastic. So let me restart the stream. Don't move. On YouTube, thank you guys for watching. Fantastic. Make sure you click the next video. It's just as important. This is the introduction to that. So stay tuned.